It's podcadzo.
What about Starlink? Have you looked into that?
I have not looked into Starlink. I honestly just don't really want to
Support Elon Musk.
give Elon my money. I know a lot of people are still super heavy into Elon and shit, but the more I learn about him, the more I'm just not on board. Like, I watched this video last week about pretty much just his... Because you heard about his thing with advertisers on Twitter, how he was basically just telling advertisers not to advertise on Twitter because they were boycotting, essentially. They were organizing a boycott.
Yeah.
So he's just like, if you think I want you to advertise on my platform, then fuck you. Like, literally, that's exactly what he said. And so I watched this video that was, like, exposing Elon on YouTube, basically. And, you know, the thing that is really unfortunate to me that I wish our podcast was wide reaching, because when we had like random important nuggets of information that it's like people should know about this and they don't, like, I just wish I knew for a fact that I was reaching an audience that would, you know, change their mind about something really quickly, because I know if we did have listeners, they would be very reasonable, rational, level-headed listeners.
They'd hate Rick Beato.
They'd fucking hate Rick Beato.
They'd hate Elon Musk.
But yeah, so the whole thing is essentially just, you know, he's been sharing a bunch of anti-Semitic and pretty racist stuff on his Twitter for years now, and it's just been getting worse and worse, and he's definitely incredibly far right. He does not want to do anything with his massive amount of wealth besides continue to grow that massive amount of wealth. No interest in sharing it, no interest in, you know, really doing anything for the greater good, even though he claims that everything he does is for the greater good. It's really just to fluff his own pockets more. Obviously, the build quality of Teslas is its own thing, like charging $70,000 for a truck with an aluminum bumper that can't tow a trailer. You know, essentially software cars where if the software doesn't work, your whole entire car is bricked. Or if a minor thing goes wrong with your hardware, then your software also shuts down completely and your car is bricked. Obviously, there's a bunch of SpaceX crap where, like, his shit just doesn't work very good, and people keep calling him a genius, but it takes a lot to get reusable rockets in the air and stuff, so that's fair. But the main thing is just the dude clearly does not like Jewish people. He does not think that... Yeah, he has a lot of twisted worldviews and anti-Semitic related viewpoints, and he's not afraid to share them on the internet. And he's also claims to be super freedom of speech, doesn't shut anyone down on the internet. People can say whatever they want. Twitter is the Wild West. But, you know, he's known for deleting people's accounts if they say bad things about him specifically, or if they say bad things about Twitter, if they question anything about Tesla or X or SpaceX or any of his many ventures. He's known to just censor the fuck out of those people and remove them from his little universe that he lives in. So he's super hypocritical, hates Jews.
I'm willing to give myself credit here. I was early in the Elon hate. Even before he became like a fixture of the culture war, the first interview I saw with him, back when like Tesla was first exploding, when like he was a hero, like when the only news about him was like this guy slept overnight in the factory like every night for 6 months or whatever to get Tesla off the ground. I was immediately like, this guy. I did not like the cut of his jib. I sensed all this coming. I don't give myself credit easily for being early on to something, but I will for the Elon thing. I've been anti-Elon since day one.
Good for you.
And
honestly,
as soon as I saw Teslas hit the road, anytime I saw a Tesla driver, I said, dork, freak,
loser.
Dork, loser. And I still do the same today.
I will admit, when Elon was first in the scene, I did think he was somewhat of a grassroots hero. Mm-hmm. And I think he was, to be honest. But when you get $1 billion, that's going to change anybody.
Yeah, if he stayed on that lane, I would have definitely become... But, I mean, why I think, had a negative view towards him from the beginning is just because I saw that he was like a glory hound. Like, you know, he wanted to be part of the mainstream, wanted to be this. He didn't care that much about it. Like, the companies were a vehicle, pun intended, Tesla, to get him into the spotlight and be like a famous, you know, figure.
Totally. And that definitely is true. Like, he always wanted to be a social figure where, like, pop culture, like, he influences things. Like, he definitely always wanted to be an influence on stuff. I think the unfortunate thing now is just that people seem to just overlook the silliest shit where it's like, it doesn't matter that he shares anti-Semitic shit on the internet, or it doesn't matter that he shares racist or xenophobic stuff on the internet, because he's Elon Musk. Like, he can do no wrong.
Well,
he invented the Tesla. Like, I drive a Model 3. I fucking love it. Or, like, the Cybertruck looks cool. Elon thinks outside of the box. He's just different than the rest of us. Like, people just don't seem to, know about the bad shit that's not even going on behind the scenes. It's going on the biggest platform on the internet.
Yeah, very public.
And B, if they do know, they just don't give a shit. They're like, well, it's Elon. Like, he's cool. He does cool things. He does good things for the earth. Let me ask you this. And this is another cool perspective that, a lot of people don't think about, because a lot of people still don't drive EVs, especially really expensive ones. Plug your car in overnight, charge it up full. That takes over 12 hours, and it takes about $60 to $80 out of your bank account, depending on where you live. It's expensive to charge your car up. Mm-hmm. And then furthermore, that electricity most likely comes from a coal-fired power plant. So you're not really, cutting down. You're definitely cutting down your greenhouse emissions quite significantly by not driving a gas car. But they're not going away. You shouldn't be jerking yourself off necessarily and thinking that, Elon Musk has solved the problem. Because the other interesting thing is, if we were to all just have electric cars like tomorrow, the amount of infrastructure we would need to accommodate that, we would need like over 15 million charging stations. Like, we would need like 3 per household essentially. And that's never going to happen. Like,
no.
So
and
the problem's not really being solved. You're just giving
primitive.
A rich guy more money,
I had a professor in college who said, and this is reductive, and I do think there are benefits to driving an electric vehicle. Obviously, I'm not anti-electric car. But
I'm not either.
Yeah. He had he would always say, if you drive an EV, you just move your tailpipe to the power plant. That was his big quote. That always stuck with me. But yeah, exactly what you said. And like, charging technology is still so primitive that even if we were to build charging stations everywhere, they'd have to be redone 5 years from now when we come out with the next charging technology, just the next physical adapter for your car.
Not even to mention the current technology we have doesn't sustain the pace of our lifestyle that we have right now. We'd have to learn how to slow down a little bit as a society. Like,
and batteries aren't that sustainable either.
Batteries are not sustainable either, especially when you charge them regularly. You almost can't charge them up to full that much. And I think the thing about EVs is they're really good for local travel, like daily driving around where you live and stuff like that. They're just not necessarily to a point yet, technologically speaking, where they can be used like for long term or for like long distance towing or all those things that people really want to be able to use EVs for. They're just not quite there yet. But the thing that sucks about Elon is I think he sells all of the packaging as though like it is the only solution forward. Like, it is the only way that we would be able to continue to drive vehicles, as if they're all electric, preferably Teslas with like the Tesla proprietary charging systems and all that bullshit that costs extra money. But, we've completely overlooked hydrogen power as a society, which I think could be way more sustainable than electrical power for like long distance driving and stuff like that. And we've also never really realized that we could just be using EVs supplementally. Like, if you just get an EV to do your daily driving, you can still have a gas motor for your long distance driving or your pleasure driving or things like that.
Well, it's going to be one of those things where like, we got it right first with the hybrid car. I feel like
definitely
60 years from now, after like several iterations of EVs, a company's going to come out with like a bold marketing campaign being like, the hybrid is back, because we decided that that's the best after 60 years of doing this bullshit. Anyways, you're listening to Podcadzo. We're talking about The Clash. Welcome to episode 2 of the Punk Rock Block, everybody. Very exciting episode. This is a band that we have been wanting to talk about for a long time.
Joe Strummer would have fucking hated Elon Musk.
He would have, for sure.
There would have been songs about him.
I know that this is like a popular thing to do, like, if they were alive today, like people do with John Lennon or Kurt Cobain. But Joe Strummer, more than anybody else, is someone I think about. Like, what would Joe Strummer think about this today? Or like, I just feel like he's a voice that's like the loss he had or he was to music and like just society at large is immeasurable. Joe Strummer is such an important figure, and it'd be very interesting to hear his takes on what we have going on today.
Yeah, I think the thing about punk, the reason why punk rose to popularity the way that it did in the UK and in New York was because the music matched the people's discontent with political discourse and social discourse at the time. And I think that definitely fits now too. I think that's why there's been a punk resurgence is because people are very unhappy with the current political discourse, and the arts are like the number one way that people tend to like express their unsatisfaction with political discourse. So yeah, I think there'd be a lot of really good Joe Strummer punk music or reggae or whatever.
Or just like imagine like Joe Strummer like feature on like an Idols song.
That'd be so sick.
That.
Yeah, so sick.
If things had gone differently, I could have seen that in the future. So this is episode 2 of the Punk Rock Block. Episode 1, we talked about the kind of origins of punk. The Clash obviously came up a lot. It's a band we've talked about quite a bit in different episodes of Podcadzo. Namely, we talked about London Calling when we did the top 100 episodes.
They've been like the sprinkles throughout most of our episodes.
So we've known a Clash episode's coming for a long time, and this just felt like a good way to do it as the second episode of the Punk Rock Block.
We just said, fuck it.
Fuck it. Because after all, the Clash is the only band that matters.
Yes. I think...
And Kadzo, obviously.
You know, there's... I can't really tell if it's a joke. I think it's half a joke, and it's also half deadly serious when you constantly say that Oasis was the best band. Like, Noel Gallagher... Well, I think you say Liam is the best rock star of all time.
Joe Strummer is my number 2. Seriously, that's if anyone ever asked me, I say Liam Gallagher and Joe Strummer.
I think in everyone else's world where people are sane and the world doesn't revolve around 2 British cucks who cuck each other constantly.
Are you talking about Noel and Liam or?
Yes.
Okay. I thought you were
They
calling
just cuck each other
Joe
on
Strummer.
hatred all the time. They're hatred cucks. But anyway, I kind of forgot where I was going with this. Most
Your
people would say
vitriol and anger for Oasis
most people
always just washes over everything
completely.
else.
It should. I think that's the appropriate reaction. But no matter what, the Clash is, in my opinion, and I think if you cut the bullshit, maybe in your real opinion too, they are the band. Like, Oasis might be the best of all time after the Clash, but the Clash, I think the Clash defined the modern band. Like, Joe Strummer, Mick Jones, their writing partnership, their creative partnership, even Topper as well. We'll get into this later too, but like everyone in the Clash participated in the formation and the identity of the Clash throughout its entire career, and they were like larger than life personalities, and people admired them. People looked forward to when they were putting out new stuff. People looked forward to just like seeing Mick Jones on the street, like they were like social local heroes. They were like grassroots heroes, all that bullshit. I think in a lot of ways they define what is the modern band, and everyone's kind of just been following in the Clash's footsteps.
I totally agree. Couldn't say better. And last episode I talked a lot about how many bands the Sex Pistols inspired, and how many bands were started as a direct result of seeing Sex Pistols. But I think when you look at the long run, the Clash is responsible for way more. And Joe Strummer all the time, like he would say in like interviews into the press, he's like, I want as many people to start bands as possible. And like, you need to get your voice out there. You need to express yourself creatively through music if that's what you want to do. And like a lot of like American bands, like I heard I'm drawing such a blank. Ian, what's his last name from Fugazi?
I don't know his last name.
It will come to me in a second.
I don't know the Fugazi dude's names really.
Whatever, is big punk rock hero. He was like a huge Clash fan and a huge Joe Strummer fan, and it's like I think I heard in an interview he said one time that he felt empowered to start Fugazi like after hearing Joe Strummer talk about like start a band, do it, do your thing, get out there.
Which is cool because, not to just overly shit on Oasis, but I think the vibe in the 90s at large, not from the grunge scene necessarily, but from the Britpop scene, was kind of a vibe of like, it kind of reverted back to like, you have to know what you're doing if you're going to be taken seriously. Like, you have to be a prolific songwriter to survive the 90s. In the 80s, it was...
Ian McKay.
Okay. Sweet. In the 80s, it was more like, you don't have to know anything at all. You can just pick up an instrument and figure it out as you go. And I think that the Clash is owed a lot of credit when it comes to that idea. Obviously Sex Pistols too, because they literally didn't know what they were doing at all.
Yeah.
And I don't necessarily think, especially like Johnny Rotten had a desire to be a frontman. He kind of just was discovered because of his larger than life personality. But in the instance of the Clash, it was very much like a driven focus of like, we are going to do this. And from the beginning, the mentality was we don't have to do it right. We don't have to do it perfectly, but we just have to do something. Like it just has to be something that exists in the future for us. So,
but what's crazy is how right they did do it, and how like immediate their presence was on stage, their sound was as a band. We'll get into the formation. I think we can start briefly on the formation. We kind of talked about it in the last episode, but I think mostly we'll talk about the albums and the music that Clash put out in this episode. But in the last episode, I said that really the only punk rock record the Clash put out was their first record, and everything after that was like, like there's almost no comparison. It's the Clash. Like it's hard to pin down a genre.
They pretty much immediately went from punk to post-punk. Like they were almost the first post-punk band in a lot of ways.
But I listened, since last episode, I've re-listened to every Clash album, which I do all the time anyways. It's one of my favorite bands. But I listened to the first 3 albums today. And even the first album, yes, it's like a young, naive album and very punky, but it's still like, you listen to it, and it's very obvious that they were going to do a London Calling, or maybe fair to say, like, give them enough rope after that. So like I was saying last episode, whereas like when you listen to the Sex Pistols, it's pretty obvious, like, okay, this is the Sex Pistols sound. This is what they do. This is the pinnacle of Sex Pistols right here. But the Clash, like, right away, we're on to something else. And it's impressive just how quickly they were able to form and reach that point and have an effect on people.
Yeah, and I think it's cool too, like, just speaking punk umbrella term again, early punk especially, like, a lot of punk bands, not necessarily in a bad way, but just in the way of a new genre kind of existing, they wanted punk to be relatively singular for the most part. A lot of artists thought punk should be, X. It should be a specific formula of only a few chords, very specific vocal ideas, or lyrical ideas, I guess I should say. And, not too much pushing of that mold, but the Clash, like pretty much exactly what you said, very early on, you can tell that they have a desire to incorporate a lot of other influences into punk music besides just like the proto-punk of the 60s and the pop of the 60s. I think they had been a lot more into world music than perhaps some of the other punk bands that had entered the scene around the same time. So it's just evident pretty early that they wanted to broaden their focus pretty quickly.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so let's get into the albums. First, we'll do a little brief summary.
A word
on
from
Clash.
our sponsor.
I wish. God damn it, someone sponsor us.
Allegra, sponsor us. I need a new bottle.
I wouldn't mind one of the cooking services, the like chef ready food. Yeah, Factor. Why not? Factor.
Hook it up.
Hook it up.
Old Spice, hook it up.
You're an Old Spice guy? Mm-hmm. I'm a Degree man myself.
I wear Old Spice deodorant, but then I wear Aeropostale cologne.
Oh, I do Ralph Lauren.
Oh, wow.
Polo blue cologne.
Yeah, you're fancy. Fancy boy.
And Degree. And you know what? I was always a deodorant stick man myself. I didn't like the gels. I was a stick dude. But Degree spray, quite good.
Okay.
And I'm always looking for any opportunity to breathe in more aerosolized chemicals, especially in a confined space like a bathroom.
Yeah, closed quarters.
Closed quarters. My bathroom's small as hell.
I bet.
And man, nothing like
bathrooms
early in the morning.
Were always small in old houses. We didn't start doing large bathrooms, I feel like, until like the 2000s.
My house, I live in a house, for the listener, built in 1947. My address is... it's in Aurora, Colorado.
I think you've said too much.
It's in Northwest Aurora.
Brave.
The name might sound familiar to you, listener, from the Aurora Mall shooting. If you're not in Colorado and Aurora's ringing a bell, kind of reclaimed fame.
That's just a really sad way to
The
contextualize
Joker.
that. Yep.
Anyways,
A national
deodorant.
tragedy.
Small bathrooms. But yeah, my house built in 1947 is like the ideal house for 2 people. You still have not been to my house, which is crazy, man.
I know.
You
I
need
don't
to
spend
come
that much
over.
time
I know
down in
it's hard
Denver.
to come down there.
No, I would love to come down there. I honestly like. I guess I just need to take off a day on like a Saturday. I need to take a Saturday off.
Well, let's talk after this because I
Have a
want to
little
have you and
barbecue.
Benson over for a meal.
Yeah, that'd be lovely.
I'm
And you're
growing-
invited too. If you're listening right now, pull up.
Yeah, you can hit me up on the DMs. All right. The Clash. What
I
we're
did
talking
want to
about
say
today.
one thing about deodorant really quick.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
I've been a gel guy the entire time because
Gel?
antiperspirant
Wow.
gives me a huge rash. Most gels give me a really bad rash too. There's only a few deodorants that don't give me a skin rash. One of them is Old Spice Captain. So that's what I currently use.
So it's a gel, so it's like in a bar thing, but you like
Blue Bar.
move a little twister and like little weird jelly worm things
No,
come
no,
out.
no. It's
Is
like
it
a gel.
that?
It's a gel block.
Gel stick.
Yeah.
Gel stick. Okay.
Mhm. No,
okay.
it's not the
That-
weird.
Not the weird.
No, my
That's
mom.
what I always think of with the
used to
gels.
use that. Sometimes when I was like growing up, I'd like run out of deodorant and I'd have to use my mom's.
That was yeah.
That shit was not the move. It was always so cold and like ooh,
And it was
sticky
I
kind
would always
of.
get way too much. 'Cause
Yeah, you
do it
always
once
get
and it's
too
like
much.
A bunch of freaking gel.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was the first. I remember my mom bought me deodorant the first time she bought me one of those gel things. I was like, deodorant fucking
Fuck you,
blows.
Mom.
Yeah, I was like, I fucking hate you, mom.
And then you went and listened to the Clash.
Yeah. I'm gonna go listen to London Calling and do heroin. All right. The
Okay,
Clash.
so-
Well, wait. Anything else on deodorant? Did we cover it?
I think overall at large, the I don't want to. I don't want to say that the deodorant industry has gotten too saturated, but when you go in the deodorant aisle, it is
It's
fucking
insane.
terrifying.
It's insane. It's just deodorant's one of those companies that's just too easy to start.
It's one of those companies.
Or like deodorant's one of those segments, one of those industries where
Yeah.
it's too easy to start
Yeah.
a company.
Well, a lot of people have their weird, like, the alternative deodorants where it's like, this one is vegan and not tested on
and
animals.
it costs $10 and doesn't fucking work.
And you can't smell it. Yeah,
Yeah.
it makes you smell worse, kind of. Yeah, so there's that whole thing going on. And I think every deodorant company should be limited to their top 3 scents. Old Spice, you get 3.
Yeah.
Suave, you get 3.
Degree's
Axe,
kind of the
you get
same.
3.
Yeah.
Degree, you get... Well, Degree already only has, like, what, 5? Do they have a bunch?
I don't know. I don't even know what my scent is called. I just know the color. It's
Is
like,
it green?
It's green.
I've used that before.
Yeah.
I think that's what Robert uses.
Hell yeah.
Yeah. Good stuff.
Respect.
Yeah, yeah.
I have to give Robert a good whiff.
The
after
Degree
this.
soap is pretty good too, like the body wash.
I have to be careful about body wash because
Same.
I have eczema
Oh, really?
and it's pretty I haven't had an eczema flare up in a long time.
I
But
think I'm prone
use
to-
hypoallergenic body wash.
Okay.
I use St. Ives.
Oh.
The one that it's like oatmeal shea butter or something. My shit has to have oatmeal in it.
I feel like if you were in a hospital and you needed to take a shower, that's what would be in the hospital shower.
if
Some
it's
good
a
old St.
respectable
Ives.
hospital for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, big St. Ives supporter, big Degree
Shout out.
supporter, big. You know what I've started using for shaving is I've gone back to what's the popular shaving brand out there? What's the number one when you think of shaving?
I think
Razors.
like Barbasol,
No, like actual blades.
Gillette.
Gillette, thank you. Shout out Gillette. Back to Gillette. I'm back to the basics. I'm back. That's what America was built on, was large corporations that have a monopoly over these everyday things that people need to be doing.
And then they
That's
come up
what I'm
with
about.
20 different variants that are all pretty much the same as the original, but
Yeah.
they're like way more.
But Degree or Gillette was, I actively protested Gillette for a long time because the standard like razor that everyone uses, like gel razor and shit. The Gillette refills are like $25 for like
Yeah.
3 razors.
Yeah.
But they got into the safety razor game, which is what I use because I'm old school. I shave like a dude from like the Civil War. I use a shave soap
Why?
thing. It feels so much
You use
better.
a straight razor?
Yeah, I use a straight razor. Or it's not technically a straight razor, it's a safety razor. So it's it's like the classic solid metal thing that you put a razor blade in. Yeah, just like a safety razor. A straight razor is like the real old school thing where it's
Yeah.
like a box cutter almost.
Yeah, that's those things.
Those
are
those you
sick.
could actually like slit your throat with them if you're not careful.
Yeah.
So mine is a little safer. It's a safety razor, but it's still like the old school way of doing it. So I get a shave brush, I
okay.
get a bar of shave soap, I lather up, I put a fresh razor in the safety or fresh blade in the safety razor, and I have a good little shave. Forever I would go to like these weird boutique brands for that, but then Gillette got in the game, and Gillette actually makes pretty good affordable safety razors. They make good beard products. I like their beard oil. I like their mustache wax.
What the fuck could you possibly be using beard oil for? You put it in just
the
your
stash,
stash?
dude. Yeah, my
really?
stash gets the skin under the hair gets dry. Or like sometimes I'll grow out the beard a little bit more. And
No,
I'll use
normally
a little
I
beard oil in it.
only use beard oil when I like right after I shave for like a couple days because that's when my skin is pretty irritated. But then after like 3 days, I stop using it. Do you use it like every day?
Usually, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
I fare better with the
Do you have
the
sensitive
hairs,
facial skin?
Yeah, very sensitive.
Okay.
Very
I
sensitive.
have pretty sensitive facial skin too, but I think it's weirdly less affected when I have a beard just because of all the natural oils and stuff.
Yeah, that's funny. My I probably should be growing out a beard all the time because when I don't shave around my chin and stuff or my jawline, my skin feels a lot better. But I don't know. I like the look of the mustache. We suffer for
The
fashion.
mustache looks really good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think the other thing is, not to sound like a fucking doucher, but as a dude, it's really hard to rock a beard most of the time because it's either like really hot or you're having to like do work to keep it in check and stuff.
Yeah.
And also there's just like that societal pressure of like if your beard doesn't look good, then it looks like shit. There's like no middle ground with beards. Like it either looks really good or it's like slightly out of whack and it looks fucking horrible.
I would always try. I'm like, my beard looks too manicured right now. I look like a fucking weirdo.
Yeah.
Spends too much time. Your beard looks very good
That's
today.
how thank you. I actually
Yeah.
just lined it up and trimmed it down and
Yeah, it looks
everything.
good.
Yeah.
And not like you're trying too hard. Like what I was worried about looks like just a natural good beard.
My dad
You're killing
always
it, dude.
told me growing up, or I don't think he have like explicitly said this, but just watching him and wanting to be like him and stuff as a kid, like he always took having a very angular beard very seriously.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the way it works.
Yeah, he
is
has a nice beard.
you have to line it up in a way where it like looks like it's intentional.
Yeah.
And I think it's cool too to do it in a way that's not necessarily the same as everybody else, because like 90% of people just kind of shave the top of the cheeks and kind of just straighten it out up here.
Yeah.
I think it's cooler to do your own specific thing
facial
with
hair
it,
is a
so.
great like vehicle for self-expression that men
Definitely.
often miss out on. And forever, like it was, like I feel like
Super shunned upon.
90s, 2000s, unless you were like doing a grunge beard thing, it was very frowned upon to have facial hair. Like you were
Definitely.
supposed to be clean shaven, and that obviously turned around. Now I feel like the mustache is really back. Like I see so many dudes with
100%.
mustaches now. That's another thing I'm willing to give myself credit on, that I was early on the mustache game. Whatever,
Definitely.
no big deal.
I
Even
think our
before
whole
I could grow a
generation-
mustache,
Our
I was
whole
trying to
generation really owned the
rock one.
mustache thing pretty early. Like,
Yeah.
a lot of people that we went to school with were rocking mustache almost right away as soon as they could grow facial hair, just because, yeah, it's a good way to make yourself look more distinguished, less like everybody else, but it's not
Yeah.
a shitload of work, and it also isn't. It doesn't usually make you look overly bad one way or another, where like having a beard, it's like a little bit too long, it looks really bad. Or like you said, if it's too lined up, then it can look pretty fucking weird. Like,
Well, the thing about the mustache is if you have a bad mustache, it's kind of rough because then it's like, okay, this guy's obviously going for the mustache because he shaved the rest of his face and the mustache is bad, and that kind of makes it cringier. But with just having a bad beard, it's like, okay, this dude just doesn't take care of himself. He's not shaving his
Right,
face. So
he
then
just
there's
doesn't
like a
shave.
different layer of judgment on it. Because speaking personally, as a guy who did have a bad mustache for a while, not that I
I don't remember that.
I would like it'd be like weeks at a time. I'd be like, all right, I'm gonna grow out the mustache now, and then I'm like, I'm sure it'll look better this time, and it didn't. And then I'd be like, no, it looks good. I'm gonna rock it for like a week, and then I'd see a picture of myself. I'm like, all right, time to shave the mustache. I wasn't able to grow a good one until like my early 20s, but I had a different point on. Oh, I had just idolized mustache, like dudes with mustaches, from like the time I was a kid. Like I'd see like an old Western movie and some guy with a strong mustache, be like, "That's so fucking sick! Can't wait to have a mustache."
Yeah. That's how I was with full beards, honestly. Like I'd see a dude with a big full beard and I'd be like, damn, I cannot wait until I can grow a beard. And for me too, like I've never been a big fan of my chin structure. Like I think my chin is just too like, it's not very manly. You know, my face isn't very manly. So having the beard really helps, especially because my voice also isn't very manly. So
no, you have a manly voice.
It's arguable. I don't really think so, but either way.
Well, you went pretty high for that. Yes.
Well, but in general, like
so.
if I'm talking loudly, if I'm talking with passion, my voice tends to just go up pretty significantly.
You have a nice grizzle behind your voice.
When I'm talking quietly into a mic, yeah. Whatever. No matter what the case. Having the beard helps me look more like a dude.
I remember when I was in like 7th grade, this random girl I met at a skate park. I was a skater then. And she was like, "You have a really deep voice." And I definitely did not, but I rode that compliment for 10 years. That got me by.
When I was in middle school, I tried to make my voice sound lower than it was. Like when I was with the boys, especially, I'd be like, "Hey, what's up, dude? Like, how's it going?"
I just had no concept of what my voice actually sounded like.
I was super insecure about my voice, honestly. You know, until my early 20s, when I was like, "Well, this is just how it is." You know.
Yeah.
My entire like childhood and all my teen years, I was just like, "Damn, why do I sound like this?"
Did you receive compliments on your laugh often?
Not really until I grew up.
Okay,
Not until I was an adult. Like when I was a kid, I don't really remember anyone ever saying, besides like my fucking mom, you know, being like, "Oh, your laugh is cute." But no, now that I'm an adult, it's almost uncomfortable every time I laugh in like a social setting or just in public. Someone is like, "Oh my God, your laugh is so great," and it's like,
dude, don't be
it's another
embarrassed
one
by
of those
that. You
things where I've always been
have a
super.
great laugh.
I've been super insecure about it for most of my life too. Like I obviously owned it when I was again in my early 20s. So I was just like, it is what it is. Like can't change it now. But growing up for a while, I was pretty insecure about it just because it is super over the top and like I can't control it. You know, like
top,
whenever I actually have a genuine laugh, it just immediately goes from 0 to 10 real quick. And people, I just don't think like it. At the end of the day, it's not because of the laugh or my voice or whatever. I just don't really like taking compliments from people in like a social setting like that. It's just always going to be super fucking awkward for me.
And then you just feel awkward about it just because they're calling something out. Like, oh, there's something noticeable about me, noticeably different.
Yeah, the next time I laugh in front of those people, I'm going to think about it twice as much and be like, "Oh shit, that was a super weird laugh," which I know that they don't mean to do that. Like nobody's doing that shit intentionally to make me like feel in my head about anything. It's just one of those things where like I would never choose to, especially like around a bunch of people, I'd never choose to be like, "Oh my God, your laugh is fucking awesome," because I know it could have that chance of making someone feel super weird about it.
Yeah, that I do the same thing, dude, with never commenting on anyone's height or really like physical appearance at all, unless it's like a buddy like you where like I can comment on your beard looks good today. But I grew up my whole life and still today, it's the number one thing I talk about is how tall I am. It's every conversation I have with somebody. And I was so self-conscious about my height for like a long time, just because, you know, like the same thing when you're a kid, anything that you feel makes you different, even if it's like objectively a good thing, like having a good contagious laugh or like being tall, just because you're different, you're going to feel awkward about it.
Yeah. Well, and with the height thing too, like I feel like boys, especially growing up, they can accidentally be like a little bit more I don't want to say like harsh, because it's not harsh, but it's more just like they can be more like ignorantly, they can say rude stuff without meaning to say rude stuff. Like if you're like taller than the rest of the boys when you're in middle school, then they're gonna give you a lot of shit for like being a freak,
exactly,
which you'll hold on to for the rest of your life. And they didn't mean to do that. Obviously, it was the same for me. Like, well, it was actually complete opposite for me. Like, everyone was always like, "Damn, like you're fucking short." I didn't hit puberty until I was like fucking 17. Couldn't grow facial hair. Had a super high pitched voice. Was very short. Just generally not a man's man, like was bad at sports, pretty much just couldn't do anything that boys liked to do. Just got a lot of shit for that type of stuff. And you realize when you're older, like no one means to say shit that you're going to hold on to for forever.
Definitely.
But it's just the way that it goes because you're impressionable at that age.
Yeah.
And yeah, like, fuck, I never would have even realized being one of the short kids in middle school, like, saying a tall kid is tall could stick with them forever. Like, because when I would say it, I'd just be like, damn, you're tall. Like, holy shit, you're really tall. And I'd be like jealous. Like, I wish I was tall like you. But then the tall kid's like, damn, I'm a fucking freak. Like, everybody just looks at me because I'm tall.
Until I was like 17 years old, I would have given anything to be 3-4 inches shorter. Like anything. I felt so awkward about how tall I was.
Greener,
yeah, exactly. And I remember distinctly in high school coming out of class one day and walking through the hallway and being taller than everybody. I was like, this is amazing. This is great. Why did I ever hate being tall? I'm going to own this. Now I love being tall. It's great.
It is cool.
So it does get better, people. If we have any high school listeners, which I hope so. I hope we do.
I think the main thing...
That sounded not in a weird way. I just mean I hope this podcast is reaching the youth.
That sounds kind of weird too.
I hope we're
touching the kids.
I hope we're connecting with young people. I hope we're cool enough
through
to still
podcast medium, not in any physical way.
Yeah, through podcast and music.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet kids love Cadzo music.
Yeah, some of them might.
Maybe. I think. Sorry, we'll get back to the Clash. The one thing to say in summation for all this is, I think at the beginning of every decade that you get older, you just have another wave of wisdom hit you. That's how I feel like. Or maybe not even every decade. It's like every 6 years, you just get a new kind of burst of like wisdom and elder statesmanhood where it's like the shit that used to matter just slowly stops mattering. I think that's the best thing to look forward to, like, as an adult and like getting older, is like a lot of stuff that I cared about when I was 18, I just simply did not give a shit about by the time I was 24. And, now we're almost 28, and it's like, there's just a lot of things that I just don't care about even more than I didn't care about them like 3 or 4 years ago. And it's cool that people can learn to just accept reality for what it is and not constantly try to just be changing it. Because I feel like we spend a lot of our childhood constantly just trying to change some aspect of our reality and just make it be more like somebody else. But then that goes away in a big way, I feel like, for most people by the time they reach like their mid-20s. So
yeah.
And then by the time you're in your 30s, you're just like, you just can't think about it anymore. You're just like, I just got to do my own thing.
You're just dead to the world when you're in your 30s.
I'm just got to survive.
And anyways, it's funny we started off this episode being like, we're so excited to talk about the Clash, and then we did a solid 15 minutes on deodorant, razors, insecurities of growing up. Back to the Clash.
I mean, London Calling is kind of about a lot of this.
Yeah. I think the members of the Clash would be fully behind everything we've talked about.
100%.
Speaking of members of the Clash, let's name the members. The 4 lads from Liverpool.
The lovable lads.
Lovable lads. They're not from Liverpool. That's a joke, you idiots. They're from London primarily, I think, around that area. Mm-hmm. Doesn't matter. The members are, we'll go back and forth.
Okay.
I'll go first. Joe Strummer.
Mick Jones.
Paul Simon.
And Hetty, Hetty Topper Heaton.
Hetty Teepin. Topper Heaton.
Oh, man.
Hetty.
Topper Heaton.
So the Clash formed in 1976. I think is what we decided on last year.
They definitely
released their first album in 77.
Yes.
April of 77.
That album took 3 weeks to record and mix.
Wow.
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Insane. They really hit the ground running.
They really did. Back to our previous point, how quickly
running.
they reached like a fully formed band is insane.
It's obviously easier once you've been on the road for a while before hitting your debut record in the studio, but still, like,
and also, like, not to take anything away from the Clash, but there was a very clear blueprint, or like such a solid scene around them where it was like easy to grab the reins a little bit more. And like, because like we said in the last episode, they were very much, you know, obviously they came in the explosion of punk rock, formed in the explosion of punk rock. They came in the explosion. Think about that, folks.
That's fucking sexy.
They were very much a reaction to the Sex Pistols. Or, you know, I don't think they saw it that way, but, like, you know, management around them and stuff, and, like, the Suits were like, okay, this is gonna, you know, these guys can be another Sex Pistols or whatever.
They did. It was one of those things where pretty early on when they were touring in 1976, especially with the Sex Pistols, a lot of people did see them as a possible outfit that could take the punk thing and make it more accessible. Because that was kind of not necessarily what they realized that they were doing at the moment, but that was what happened in hindsight. So yeah, I think that definitely was a thing that was like floated out into the universe before their first album had even dropped. There's a spider on the wall. Think he'll make it into the shot?
So there is. No, it's usually not in the area. But since we're talking about it, I can do a little zoom in on him. I went camping over the weekend and slept an entire night with a spider above my head, knowing it was there.
You didn't try to move him somewhere else?
I did it first, and it went
Directly back?
It went poorly, and then I accepted it.
Okay. Yeah, spiders just be doing their own thing.
I've never minded a spider, although my brother did get bitten by a brown recluse spider about a year ago.
And he got West Nile?
Yeah, dude. Cam,
holy shit.
Shout out Cam. Cam had a string of bad luck with various injuries, but 2 of them were insect related. He got West Nile, and then he got bitten by a brown recluse and had what's that called where your skin dies? Whatever. Like the poison like actually like ate away at the skin on his hip, the muscle and the tissue in his hip.
Wow.
And he had to go to the hospital a couple times. It was bad news.
Holy fuck.
Yeah. He was living in the basement of this house that he was renting with some buddies, and there was a spider down
there. Was a brown recluse in
the basement.
Oh my god.
This is right over on Elizabeth.
And it bit him?
Yeah, it bit him in the hip.
Like while he was asleep?
He thinks so.
Okay.
He doesn't
It just came up. It just crawled on him. It was like,
maybe
fuck you.
in his sheets or whatever, and yeah.
He like rolled onto it or
rolled
something?
onto it. Did a big old bite.
Sheesh.
Yeah, dude.
That's fucking horrible.
Yeah. But
did he wake up
recovered.
like right away?
No, I don't.
He didn't feel it right away?
Feel it. I don't even think he felt it like the next morning. I think it was like a couple days later. He's like noticed like a big bite on his hip. I was
Dead
like,
spot.
what is this?
Holy fuck.
Yeah. We're talking about the Clash.
Okay, so the debut came out.
Yeah, the debut came out
1977.
1977. Let's talk about it. So we're gonna be a little bit limited on time. I think the albums we should focus on are the Clash, Give 'Em Enough Rope, London Calling, obviously Sandinista, and then we can talk on combat rock a little bit. Those are basically the major albums. They did a couple releases after combat rock, but those aren't really like, that's kind of when the band was like breaking up and like things were getting weird. So I don't consider those like legitimate.
I think most of the notes
releases
are really worth mentioning are from like the London Calling era anyway, and Sandinista.
Yeah. Well, I guess the only major LP like formal release was Cut the Crap after Combat Rock, which is a good album. Cut the Crap's pretty interesting.
It's interesting now. I think at the time that it came out, a lot of people did not like it.
No, it seemed like messy and weird, and they were like very influenced by hip hop then, and like New York and stuff. And it's a weird record.
Joe Strummer was just trying to make something that was almost like a return to form in terms of edginess, but then in terms of production, he wanted it to be super modern.
Yeah,
and he was co-writing with a different person at that point. Mick Jones had left the band or gotten kicked out rather.
Yeah,
and
But
pretty much right after Cut the Crap came out, Joe Strummer actually disowned the record, said that he wanted nothing to do with it, and then disavowed the Clash pretty much immediately after that. So
there's a really good, before we get into the albums again, there's a really good Joe Strummer documentary. Let me actually find the name of it.
I think it's called I'm Horny.
I think it's called
My Name's Joe Strummer and I'm Horny.
Joe Strummer, The Future is Unwritten.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Mm-hmm. And I'm horny. And I'm horny.
I'm horny for sex. SECKS.
SEGGS.
Segs. But yeah, I think, okay, so let's just do this really quick. The debut came out in 1977, and then Give 'Em Enough Rope came out in 78. London Calling was 79. Sandinista was 1980. Combat Rock was 82, and then Cut the Crap was 85. So essentially 5 records in a little over 7 years.
I didn't realize there was such a gap between Combat Rock and Cut the Crap. That's interesting, but it makes sense. Like,
yeah,
all the shit that went on. But man, what an insane run of albums within 4 years.
Definitely.
The debut, The Clash, Give 'Em Enough Rope, London Calling, and Sandinista.
And
Crazy.
London Calling was a double record.
Yeah.
And then Sandinista wound up being a triple record.
Uh-huh.
Just purely because Joe Strummer was giving the record label crap because they didn't want London Calling to be a double release. So a lot of music.
So the debut album, The Clash, released April 8th, 1977. As we said before, this is like really like the Clash is only like typical punk rock album where like if you listen to it, if your average person on the street were to listen to this album who didn't know a lot about music and they were to say like, what would you call this? They'd be like, oh, I think this is like punk rock. Like this kind of reminds me of like the Sex Pistols maybe, if they knew that much. Whereas like any album after that, you could play a single off of it. Like even Give 'Em Enough Rope. It's like, oh, this is like an R&B song kind of, or this is like ska, I guess maybe. I don't know. But The Clash is really a punk album, but like we said earlier, there's glimmers of what The Clash would become after that. So the first, I believe the first thing off of this, or at least the first thing they recorded, was the song White Riot, which is it's almost like Ramones song, feels like White Riot. An interesting sentiment to that song. The fact that the song's called White Riot, I Want a Riot of My Own, and the fact that Mick Jones was in a band called something like London SS before this, and the fact that Joe Strummer's brother was part of the National Front, you'd be like, okay, the Clash are Nazi sympathizers.
This is not good.
Obviously, they're not. Joe Strummer's clearly very anti-fascist. But I was always confused, like even as a young kid, I remember hearing White Riot and being like, what do they mean by this? It's an interesting song, and I don't know if we have enough time to get into it.
Daddy, can you teach me about the race wars?
Yeah, exactly. The other big songs on this, Janie Jones, I'm So Bored with the USA. This isn't in order, I'm just naming notable songs. Police and Thieves, I'd say the first like major Clash hit, one that people still know today, and Garageland. Those are the songs I wanted to highlight off of the Clash.
Excellent.
Cool.
Yeah. It got good reception like right out the gate. That's the only other thing I'd really mention is just that critics almost instantly revered it as being a very important record and calling it like a pretty true through line of punk music and what punk music was supposed to be at that time. So that was another thing about the debut.
And I didn't even leave or anything. That was a great
And I'm definitely not going to leave right now either.
So yeah, debut. I recommend everyone listens to it. They followed that up with 1978, Give 'Em Enough Rope. Before we get into the track listing for this, Julian did get up. He's not even doing anything. He's grabbing a cord. Never mind. So Give 'Em Enough Rope was produced by what's his name? The dude from Blue Oyster Cult. Julian, do you know who I meant to make a note of this. Sandy Pearlman, thank you.
Sandy Pearlman?
Sandy Pearlman produced Give Him Enough Rope.
The second record.
So there's a noticeable difference.
Big shift almost right away.
Big shift in the writing of the songs to a degree.
Yeah.
But mostly in the production, the overall feel of the songs. You could tell they were going for a more commercial vibe. They wanted the songs to sound more commercial and reach a broader audience. I don't know when they started recording it, but it was released in November of 78, so it's like really a year and a half between the first album and the second album.
They started recording it in the beginning of 78, so.
Okay. Cool. So took 10 months maybe.
Probably less, knowing just the way that they used the studio back then.
Studio. Yeah. I mean, obviously they weren't in the studio for 10 months, but between the time they first started tracking stuff and the release was 10 months.
Yeah.
Or 11 months, perhaps. Somewhere around there. So the track
first
list.
U.S. release, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
First record to be released
in the U.S. Yeah. How did it perform in the U.S.?
I think I don't know about U.S. I think it was number 2 in the U.K.
Yeah, it like almost immediately, peaked at number 2 in the U.K. and number 128 in the Billboard 200 in the U.S. So not bad.
Not bad.
Not bad for the first major release in the U.S.
Especially because, kind of like what you said, they had already started moving away from being pure punk, and they were already working a lot of other influences into their sound by the time this record came out.
Definitely.
Including like reggae and ska. A lot of music that wasn't necessarily dominating the airwaves in the U.S. in the 80s.
So it opens with Safe European Home, which...
Banger.
A great, amazing song. But I guess not a million miles away from like what they were doing on the first album. But then once you get into English Civil War, Tommy Gunn and Julie's been working for the Drug Squad, it's like... it's like that could be on London Calling, pretty much.
Totally.
Especially Julie's been working for the Drug Squad because that's just clearly like I was saying, like an R&B song, kind of.
Yeah, well, and Tommy Gunn too. It's one of those Clash songs where it's like people know that it is like people know it more than they know it's the Clash. Almost like it sounds broader than just that's that one Clash band. Like
totally, and it's like it's one of those things too where it's like, what do you call this? It's not punk rock. It's not classic rock. It's not indie or alter. It's like it's really just the Clash. It's they like Tommy Gunn is kind of similar to I guess you could almost say that about Police and Thieves on the first album, although that has more of like a dubby ska influence that's a little more apparent. I'm trying to think of like other songs on London Calling that would be in that vein, where it's just like you can't pin it down other than just being like a Clash song.
That I know a good song from London Calling. Rudy Can't Fail. That's what it's called.
Yeah, but that's ska.
But it's like in between. It's
fail.
like in between. It's like in between ska and dub, and then it also has like the chord structure of a punk song.
Yeah. I don't have too much more to say about Give 'Em Enough Rope. I think it's a great sophomore album. I think it's like, for me though, the first album is notable just because it's a debut album and a good debut album, and then obviously London Calling is one of the best albums of all time, if not the best album of all time. And Give 'Em Enough Rope is a very solid album, great sophomore album, but it kind of gets lost in that arc to me of like, it's not the first album, it's not the third album.
It's definitely it's a stepping stone album where it's like, okay, they had the punk release. It was well received. Obviously, we've talked about the sophomore slump. It's really hard to be a band that has a good first release and then follow it up with a solid second release that, keeps people happy. Because they have very high expectations if your first release is really good. So Give 'Em Enough Rope, I think, is one of those instances of like they wanted to show people that they had a broad interest in influences. They had a lot of different things that they liked, but they still had the youthful kind of socially charged energy that came from the first album of like they're still pretty damn young, they were still pretty fresh to the whole scene, and this was their first like major label release, first release in the US, so I think they would definitely still had a lot of that like youthful energy on Give 'Em Enough Rope that makes it feel punky, but then the other influences that draw it in almost make it feel like a sporadic record, like what the fuck's going on type record. Yeah, you can't really describe it. It's just a Clash record. But then you get to London Calling and it's almost like these dudes grew the fuck up. Like in a year, it's like there's just suddenly so much maturity, so much profundity to the record that like it almost doesn't feel like the same band in a lot of ways. So
the song I wanted to compare Tommy Gun to, I think, was Spanish Bombs.
Okay.
Like Spanish Bombs is another song where it's like, and it's kind of similar in like lyrical content where it's like, you know, talking about violence, talking about war, but in this like, you know, very almost like so on the nose that it's like a little obvious or ironic, but still like very powerful. So anyways, it's just like only the Clash could do those songs. Only Joe Strummer could come up with stuff like Joe Strummer and Mick Jones could come up with stuff like that. So London Calling, the big one, released in what's the exact date? Or released on 14th of December 1979. December release, interesting. It was recorded between August and November of 1979 in London, in Wessex. It's 65 minutes in length, which is pretty crazy, like a big jump for them because The Clash, the debut album, and Give 'Em Enough Rope were both like around 30 minutes, 35 minutes in length. So they doubled the album, and it is, like we said, a double LP. So they had a lot of content for this. For reading the music, it's definitely one of the most iconic album covers of all time. They parodied an Elvis album cover with the font and the colors they used for the font, but it's a picture from a live gig of Paul Simonon smashing his bass in a very iconic photo. So it's one of those albums where they got the artwork right and they got the music right.
They got the whole thing
right. They got the whole package, brother. And for that, I say congratulations to The Clash. All right, let's get into the songs. Unless you have anything else on the recording or anything of London Calling or the production.
The only thing that I wanted to mention was just that pretty famously, Joe Strummer had talked about how this record came out of a pretty heavy stint of writer's block for Joe Strummer and Mick Jones. Mm-hmm. And this record was one of the first instances of full collaborative songwriting with The Clash. Like, they had obviously all brought ideas to the table in the past, but this record was written a lot more with everyone in the room, even though a lot of the ideas were still presented by Joe Strummer and Mick Jones. So yeah. I think that's why you see a huge, wide variety of genre and just different subgenre exploration on this record in general.
We've been doing a lot of praising of Mick Jones and Joe Strummer. It's obviously deserved, but I just want to shout out Paul Simonon real quick because Paul Simonon was he's one of those guys where it's like, he's not obviously the frontman for the band, but he brought all of the attitude for the band. He like informed how they dressed and how they looked on stage. He was definitely the coolest member of The Clash. Like if you look at Paul Simonon back in the day, he looked like a model. He was like beautiful.
He was beautiful.
He looked amazing. And he was really the guy who like was introducing them to a lot of like those outside like world music influences. Like I could be wrong about this, but I'm almost positive like that Paul Simonon was the preeminent like ska fan in The Clash, and like he was bringing most of that influence to it. So yeah, Paul Simonon's influence can't be overstated. And then also Topper Heaton, like we haven't been talking about it, but just what a force Topper Heaton was on the drums, and like I think
and as a songwriter
too. And unfortunately, like, what happened to Topper is he developed a pretty bad heroin addiction, so he kind of had to be forcibly removed from the band.
And the heroin usage started out as a pretty, with most people, it started out as a pretty just like occasional habit.
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
You just do it
kinda
for fun
harmless,
every now and then. Yeah, and it did start around the London Calling time as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so this is when it kind of started entering the picture. But anyways, it opens up with the titular track, London Calling, which is one of the most iconic Clash songs of all time, if not one of the most iconic songs of all time.
This is every genre of music that Joe Strummer mentioned being influenced by during their making of this record. I thought it was pretty mind-blowing. He said they're listening to reggae, rockabilly, ska, New Orleans R&B, jazz, pop, and roots music.
And it's like
all of those things
every
are on
one
this
of those
record.
it's like, okay, that's clearly a New Orleans jazz song, you know? Yeah. Or New Orleans R&B, whatever.
It's just insane.
Yeah.
Like they had all these influences and they wound up to meld them all into a cohesive record.
It's amazing. Brand new Cadillac, which is the rockabilly influence. Rockabilly. Jimmy Jazz, which is jazzy, but there's even like a little bit of a scatting part
there's
on
some
it.
Rockabilly,
but it's so rockabilly influenced. Hateful, which is a little bit more on the punky side, I'd say. And then Rudy Can't Fail, which is definitely a very unique, idiosyncratic Clash song, but
ska punk.
pulling from the ska punk vein. Then it goes into Spanish Bombs, which I've already talked about. So that's side one. And I should say this is the second album I ever got on vinyl. I think I've talked about this on the pod before. Love Supreme by John Coltrane was the first. London Calling was the second. So those two albums still remain my most played albums to this day. And probably London Calling has taken the lead by a long shot. I listen to this album constantly. It's whenever I want to feel bad about how bad I am at writing music or how little I've achieved at my age, I put on London Calling and just say, God damn it.
Damn, bro.
Yeah.
That's really unfortunate that you think of it that way.
I mean, I still enjoy it as an album, but I can definitely get in that.
You enjoy it because it makes you not enjoy yourself.
Yeah. I beat myself up whenever I listen to it. So it goes into Spanish Bombs, The Right Profile, Lost in the Supermarket, which is a song I wanted to pause on real quick, is like a proto new wave song.
Mm-hmm.
Totally standalone. Mick Jones sings this one, and Strummer also sings on it too, but primarily a vocal from Jones. And another cool thing about The Clash is the dual vocalists, a time-honored tradition in the UK. Obviously, the Beatles did it with Lennon and McCartney. Oasis did it with Noel and Liam. But before that, The Clash did it with Jones and Strummer. And I always love having a Mick Jones vocal performance on a Clash song.
Yeah.
And Lost in the Supermarket is probably one of his more iconic ones.
Definitely. I think that song also had a second life around the mid-2000s when overconsumerism started to become part of the general conversation again, because there's a lot of themes of that in that song.
Yeah.
So
Came in here for a special offer, guaranteed personality.
and
So
Ben Folds covered that song for the movie Over the Hedge. That song was covered by
Over
Ben
the
Folds
Hedge
for
has
Over
come
the
up
Hedge.
on the pod a couple times, really. That Over the Hedge is in a very prestigious
Foundational
class
moment for
of-
our childhood.
Definitely, and for me, it's in a prestigious class of movies that I call minivan movies because we had a Toyota Sienna that had the DVD player in the back.
Yeah, you were rich. We get it.
And that was a pretty standard middle class minivan, brother.
I mean, my parents drove a Volvo from the mid-90s, so.
Anyways. Over the Hedge was in the rotation heavily. Should I take a moment here and recite all of the minivan movies?
Sure.
Or do you want to talk about The Clash more?
No, I want to hear the minivan movies.
Over the Hedge,
Banger.
Ratatouille,
Banger.
Little Monsters, I think was the name of the
Never
movie with
saw that.
Howie Mandel. It's like a weird one from the 90s. I might be getting the name wrong. Sky High,
Banger.
banger.
That movie was kind of scary as a kid.
Yeah. I remember
first
being
time.
kind of disturbed by it. And Valiant,
Never saw that either.
movie about pigeons, carrier pigeons in the war.
Yeah.
Those were the core minivan movies.
You want to know what I did in the back of the Volvo?
Played around with your sick little twisted peens.
Yeah. I discovered jerking off at a very young age. No, I looked out the window.
Oh, cool. What'd you see?
I saw the world.
Yeah, you saw the world. Guess what? I saw Ratatouille
I would have way rather seen
300
Ratatouille,
times.
but that's more ideal, I think.
Yep. All right. Lost in the Supermarket, Clampdown. Amazing song. And then a song I wanted to pause on, especially Guns of Brixton.
What, Guns of Brixton?
I think Guns of Brixton may be one of the best recordings of all time. It's, as a song, amazing. And Paul Simonon wrote this and sang on it. And that's where you can see kind of his dubby, ska, reggae influence come in on the Guns of Brixton. But I can't really describe it too well, but just like the feeling of the recording of the Guns of Brixton is incredible. Like, it feels like it was really recorded, like either like in a cave in Jamaica somewhere, or like on the streets of London, and just feels like such a natural, like funky, weird recording. I can't really, but anytime I'm listening to this album and that song comes on, I just pause and like really like listen. There.
It does
and
command
I just love
your
the
attention.
sound of that
Definitely.
song so much.
It's a very, it's a very commanding song, and it is a very unique listening experience. And kind of related to this, maybe slightly different. So I'm sorry if this just derails us completely again, but I did just want to mention, like, because remastering LPs wasn't necessarily like a super common trend until I would say like the mid 2000s.
Yeah.
This record, London Calling, was one of the first like major reissues and
when
remasters.
like 20. Well, that's the one I listened to digitally all the time. Was like 2013 remaster or something like that.
Yeah, 2013.
Yeah, that's when I listened to it digitally all the time.
I think it's probably, in my opinion, the most well remastered record of all time as well. Like, it keeps the original like attitude and atmosphere of the original record alive super well, but it just updates it in a super nice way to where it sounds a bit more modern and there's a bit more separation between everything that's going on. So did just want to say, I think perhaps not, this is just a theory that I have. It's not like proven in any way, but I do think that this record, the remastered version of this record, kind of kicked off the whole phase of everyone wanting to remaster records from the 70s and 80s.
Important call.
Because they saw that it could be done at a very high level. Yeah.
I have to pee. Do you want to keep talking about this album or take a pause?
I'll try to keep talking about it.
Keep doing it. I'll be right back.
Okay, so it's also almost time for everyone else to get here too. So if someone else shows up, I'm just gonna have them sit down in Colin's spot, and then they can be my new co-host, because I've been looking for a reason to get rid of that fucking guy for a while anyway. And I think this could just be a natural transition. Like, oh, sorry, you came back down from peeing and Benson's here. He just took your spot. Now I'm doing the podcast with Benson. That's crazy. Better go fuck yourself. Anyway, okay, so London Calling. The only other thing that I'd really say about this record that is important to me personally is, and we mentioned all the subgenres of music that influence this record, and all the kind of different things that appear on this record, from like a ska idea to a reggae idea or like some dub. I think that what's important about this, and we kind of mentioned it earlier too, but what's important about this record specifically is it showed a lot of artists, punk artists and otherwise, prog artists, you know, pop artists of the 70s and whatnot. Excuse me. It showed all of these artists that you could bridge your genre or the specific type of music that you're trying to make with other types of music successfully, if you could make it accessible enough to where it makes sense still. Like, obviously, if you're listening to a punk record and then there's a full-blown ska song out of nowhere, it's going to be like super off-putting, and you're not necessarily going to like love the fact that it's there. But what The Clash did super well was they kind of took that original formula and, okay, my plan didn't work, damn it. They took the original punk formula that they knew from like the mid-70s, and they applied these other genres to that formula in a way that it still felt accessible, and it made it possible for, like, you know, prog artists and just pop artists of the late 70s to form their own, like, insightful response to that.
What the hell are you talking about? I'll leave you alone for 2 minutes and you bring it to prog rock.
So I was just kind of saying, like, the thing that blows my mind the most about this record, and we've kind of talked about it, leading up to this, but the fact that they are able to successfully meld so many genres of music with punk and still have it feel like a cohesive thing. Like if a ska idea pops up on the record, it doesn't feel like out of place because it's still in the context of the like Clash 70s punk formula in a lot of ways. And so I think I think that what made this record super important in the time that it came out and why it's still revered as such an important record to this day is the fact that it informed a lot of artists around the Clash too, to be like, hey, you guys can take other interests that you have and meld them in with the genres of music that you're playing, as long as you do it in a way that's still accessible. It still makes you seem sounds
is earnest.
Yeah, exactly. Is genuine, and you still make it seem like it fits within the context of your universe. And I think that we saw in the late 70s a lot of prog and pop kind of responding to this notion from the Clash of like, because I mean, like Steely Dan, for example, started really heavily using a lot of jazz influence in their later stuff, and a lot of I guess I would just say, for lack of a better term, just like lounge jazz and casual smooth jazz and stuff like that. And I think that could arguably be in some ways a response to like a band like The Clash in the mid 70s being like, hey, this is a punk ska record, or like, even people calling it a post-punk album as early as, a couple weeks after it came out. So
yeah,
I think it's just super important for that reason, and that's why it is like arguably the best record of all time, is because based on the context that you listen to it in, it's like 10 different types of record,
On that note, and something while I was peeing, I remembered this. I talked about Brand New Cadillac being rockabilly. Yes, because it literally was. Like, there's a few covers on the song. So Rockabilly wasn't written by, or excuse me, Brand New Cadillac wasn't written by The Clash. It was Vince Taylor, who did that, and performed by Vince Taylor and his Playboys. And then the other covers on here are Wrong'em Boyo and Revolution Rock. Which Revolution Rock surprised me because that one feels like kind of a Clash. Well, I guess they all kind of feel like Clash songs, which goes to show how much they loved this music and how much they could really make it their own and like perform it so earnestly that it doesn't feel like, oh, it's a cover on a Clash album. Like, it feels like songs that they wrote. I think
they loved rockabilly. They loved like old school Southern 60s and 50s rock and roll music.
Yeah. Dude, we got through London Calling. That's the important album we want to talk about. I think
we do have
we have to go ahead.
Not today, but we do have to talk about Sandinista at least a little bit, probably next time.
All right, people. All this means is there will be a future Clash episode. We talked a little bit too much about other shit we want to talk about. Sorry, that's what podcadzo is about.
No one's listening.
No,
anyway.
yeah. That's true.
No, but I think like we could just do a quick Sandinista shout out and talk about how crazy of a record that is. Okay?
Yeah.
And the fun thing about Sandinista, I mentioned this earlier. It's a triple release, really long record, kind of in response to Joe Strummer's unhappiness with the label that they were on at the time. And it's also the first Clash album where all four members are credited songwriters for each song on the record. So just by virtue of that, kind of like what we alluded to on London Calling, the more you introduce other songwriters, the more there's going to be a melding of influences. So the record goes all over the fucking place.
And then we'll have to talk about Combat Rock, which is kind of their bloated, falling apart rock album that, that's the way these things
and
goes.
Toppers,
it has the most hits on it.
Toppers maxing out on his heroin addiction.
Yep.
Mick Jones and Joe Strummer are getting in fights all the time. The future of the Clash seems unsustainable. They're not too sure which direction they want to go in. There's just a lot of questions up in the air around the time of Combat Rock and afterwards. So
definitely. So everyone, you can expect a a thrilling part 2 to the Clash. Probably not in the punk rock block. We'll do that in a future episode. But thanks for listening to this one. And we'll see you next week with potentially the 3rd installment of the punk rock block.
Potentially.
Or potentially something totally different.
Yeah, we might have to do a deodorant follow-up.
True. Will, what kind of deodorant do you use? Yeah.
Come over here.
Do you want to get on the mic?
We've been talking about this. The people need to know. What kind of deodorant do you use?
Old Spice.
What scent?
It's like some tropical one. It's like a beach one.
Fiji?
Yes.
White, the white one?
Yes. That one.
You heard it here first.
Alex Jones talking about deodorant. That's a true patriot.
That's a true red-blooded American.
I use Degree, Will.
I also use Old Spice, but I use Captain.
I used to use Old Spice. I was a big Axe guy back in the day, too. The Axe advertisements really worked on me. Man, all I want to talk about is deodorant.
Dude,
it feels like a chore talking about anything else.
I'll give you something fun to talk about. Do you remember 5 Gum?
Dude, as soon as I said the Axe advertisements, 5 Gum was right in the same vein, and I chewed 5 Gum
like
exclusively.
The chewing gum.
I was so excited. I still remember to this day the first time I saw 5 Gum in a store. It was in the Target on Harmony over there.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, this is the shit I saw on TV. And I bought one immediately.
Okay, so me and Kelsey were watching this video the other night about how basically just the ad campaign for 5 completely dissolved. And like it went from being a super cool, super exciting ad campaign to just like dissolving off the face of the earth.
Such is the
quickly.
nature of being so revolutionary.
Right.
You can't sustain that.
You can't sustain that level for too terribly long. But no matter what, during that video that we were watching about their marketing and their ads and stuff, the dude basically said, 5 was really marketed as like a boys gum to like middle school boys.
Yeah.
Like this is
boys rule, girls drool.
Chew this and you're a fucking badass.
Yeah.
Like, shit like that. And Kelsey was like, I did not know that. Like, I didn't realize that the marketing was like middle school boy marketing.
There were women in some of the 5 ads.
Well,
I remember women fell
it's not
from the
that there
sky
weren't
every
women
once in
in
a
the
while.
ads, but it's just that it was mostly
There's hot women though.
appealing. It was mostly meant to appeal to middle school boys.
Yeah.
That type of thing, like where it was middle school boys really enjoyed the product more than, say like a middle school girl might enjoy the product. But Kelsey was just like, I didn't really realize it was like that. But like, when I was in middle school and hanging out with the boys and stuff, if you didn't chew 5 Gum, you were like a little bitch, It wasn't the same for
If
you.
you don't chew 5 Gum, then fuck you.
Exactly. It had to have been kind of the same for you. Like, chewing 5 made you like manlier. It made you cooler.
Chewing
you
5,
had more mystique.
wearing Axe deodorant.
Yeah, they go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Having an Element backpack.
Wearing DCs that are 3 sizes too big.
DCs. Or fucking Osiris's were also acceptable to wear.
And Asics. Everyone was into Asics. But that was like both.
Fuck
that
Asics,
was girls and boys.
Fuck Asics.
Yeah, Asics are trash. But no matter what, 5 Gum was
Well,
was
are
a
you wearing
crazy product.
Asics right now? No. What are you wearing? What tennis shoes are you wearing?
They're like these runner ones.
Those look like Asics to me. Oh, Saucony's.
Those are good. Those are good.
I'm wearing some off the walls.
I'm wearing Clark
Gray velvet.
Clark leather boots.
I was a Skechers boy. Wearing those
Dude, I have mad respect for people who
admit to wearing Skechers.
Well, no, not admit. People who just did it. That is, Skechers were the shit and continue to be the shit. There's a reason why Skechers have this.
I always thought Skechers were fucking lame.
The staying power. But it's one of those like.
Except for
Crocs has staying power.
well, Crocs came back. They went away and then came back.
All of my students, like kid students, they all wear Crocs.
Wear Crocs. Do they have buttons for them?
Yeah, they have. They're called like charms.
Charms, yeah.
They all have those little Croc charms.
Yeah, I've been very tempted to buy another pair of Crocs lately. I almost pulled the trigger. I almost killed myself in the mall. I almost pulled the trigger on Crocs. Earlier this year, I was at a outlet mall and there's a Crocs store. Almost bought a pair of black ones and a bunch of charms for them.
Here's another I grew up poor story that's good.
Do it.
Crocs were like super popular. You know, they're the first wave of Crocs when they were like a new thing and everyone was super into them. And like everyone made their own like offshoot Crocs, like generic Crocs.
Yeah. I remember those.
And I got mine
I remember
from
I
Walgreens.
had a pair of Sam's Club, like Makers, whatever the Sam's Club
Maker's
brand
Mark,
is.
Members Mark.
Members
Yeah.
Mark. Offshoots. Yeah. Anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good. So I got mine from Walgreens. And because, you know, the Croc design was proprietary, they had to change the design a little bit. So instead of the circles,
Yeah.
they were diamonds.
That's the only thing they could do is make the holes different.
Yep.
Which is, you would spot one and immediately be like, poor kid.
Yep, you're
Poor
fake. You're a
kid, yeah.
fake. So mine had diamonds. They were black. But because of the diamonds, instead of the circles, I could not get the charms. The charms did not fit in the
Yeah, it
diamond
didn't
holes.
fit.
And so when I wore them to school and everyone had the charms, they would just be like, well, why are your Crocs different? And I always just had to be like, well, they're not Crocs. They're Airwalks. I think
not
they were called Airwalks.
It's a pretty dope name.
Way better than Crocs in
Yeah.
hindsight. But, yeah, basically I had to stop wearing them because I didn't want to be alienated.
What'd you say?
Shit said they were limited edition.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the diamond Crocs.
Our shit's
cool kids only.
limited.
I was kind of a dumbass, so I didn't really think to do that.
Crocs actually stole the design from Walgreens Corporation.
And then Heelys.
Dude, I can never find Heelys in my size, or my mom, that's what she said, but I think it was more she was refusing to buy Heelys for
Yep,
me.
my mom was deathly afraid of Heelys.
Because
She was like,
she
if
can
you-
find Heelys in my size.
if you ride these, you will die.
Yeah.
Like your head will just mash onto the
I'd have
concrete.
definitely
your
broken
brain
my
will
wrist. For sure, at a minimum, if I had Heelys.
leak. You think?
I think so.
Did
The-
you ever like
The
ride
shit
a?
I was getting up to, as
I
a
guess
kid.
you were.
I would have gone to
On
the
your
skate
demon
park
shit.
immediately and tried to drop in on Heelys. And probably would have busted my head open.
Yeah. Damn.
Yeah.
Well, I guess it's for the best that you didn't get them then. But fuck, I wanted them so bad.
Yeah. Do you ever ride ripsticks?
Mm-hmm. My
Yeah.
cousins had.
I associate the 5 gum thing reminded me of it. I just associate
ripstick.
ripsticks and 5 gums actually together a lot as the best years of my childhood.
Yeah, I mean, ripsticks were the shit. They're not efficient for actually getting from point A to point B, but they're really fun.
They're not.
My cousin,
you want
cousin
some
Cole got super into
Built ass
ripsticks.
glutes and hips though.
Mm-hmm.
Ride a ripstick.
Yeah, my cousin did have a pretty good ass.
Yeah. I have a good ass. If that's another thing I'm willing to give myself credit for. I have a dump truck.
Bro, you are a toothpick with legs.
But I have a pretty good ass.
Does a toothpick have an ass?
This one does. And I played hockey. People think it's from hockey. Nah, dude, it's from ripsticking.
It's from ripsticking.
It's from ripsticking.
Did you ever get into like skateboarding or longboarding?
Yeah, dude, you should know this about me. I was at the skate park every day.
Were you
7th,
really?
8th grade.
Really?
Yeah, I was a little skate rat.
So
I
many
got-
things that I just didn't know. Like, I thought in 7th and 8th grade you were just like a little fucking jock.
Nah, I got real into skating. I was pretty good too. Like I progressed really quickly at skating and then just plateaued super hard.
Mhm.
But like I went to the skate park one day, didn't even know how to drop in. The very next day, I was dropping in
Holy
on
shit.
the highest drop in at that particular skate park, which was 12 feet with 3 feet of vert, yo.
So you did.
And I remember there was an older
progress
dude there
pretty
who was
quick.
like, "Aren't you the kid who was learning to drop in yesterday?" I was like, "Yeah, what's up, dude?" And he's like, "That's pretty impressive."
Damn.
But then I basically stopped there. I could rock to fakie. I could 50-50 on the coping, but mostly I just carved. I could air out a little bit.
Carving's the most fun anyway.
I really, I still like longboard every once in a while, and like I still have a skate deck. So if I have time to mess around, I'll just like go out on the street and like pop some ollies and kick flips and stuff. But I really want to get back into just going to the skate parks and carving some bowls.
Yeah.
Because it's such a great feeling. And now I wouldn't have to do, like before it was always the pressure of like, I have to be like pushing it, I have to be doing more. But now, fuck that. I could just go and carve and have a good time.
Totally.
And that's all I want to do.
Yeah. I think longboarding is the thing that I miss the most because you could just get,
Longboard is so
you
fun.
can just haul
dude.
dick on a longboard.
So
You can go
fun.
so fast.
Some of my best memories are like late at night, going from point A to point B, like your friend's house back to my house on
Cold,
the bike trails
crisp
around
air.
here, cold crisp air, just longboarding as fast as you possibly can.
When you pass like a little pond or a little stream or something, you can feel that
feel
extra
it.
cold air.
Feeling the cracks in the sidewalk.
Dan and I did together.
Ooh,
Longboarding.
how romantic.
That's cool. That was like an early date activity for you guys.
That was actually when we were just friends.
Oh,
Dave, we were just friends. We just longboarded around.
that's cool.
Platonic longboarding
Platonic longboarding.
could be the name of an American football album.
It's pretty good one. All right, everyone. We're like, oh, we can't get through all the Clash material, and then we fucking talked about deodorant and skateboarding for 15 more minutes.
I still think we could do a little bit more material as far as deodorant's concerned, honestly.
Yeah, we'll do a deodorant episode. Let's do an early. What's that Kings of Leon album? Early manhood. Early. Let me find it.
I do not know. I don't fuck Kings of Leon, bro. Fuck them.
Kings of Leon Records.
You know, like the Harry's products.
Youth and Young Manhood. Let's do an
Youth
episode
and
called
Young
Youth and Young Manhood.
about
And
deodorant.
we'll talk about deodorant and Five Gum.
Did you ever buy like the Axe spray cans?
Yeah. Oh, dude, that's all
My
I
mom
fucking
wouldn't let me
used.
because she was like, it gives me a headache. Like strong perfumes give me a headache.
I
But I still think that's bullshit, Mom. You just didn't want me to get the ladies in 7th grade.
my son will get too many girls with Axe body
As soon as you
spray.
throw on some Axe, dude, you just become an instant chick magnet. My
I-
mom wasn't ready for that.
I think there's something to that. I am, to this day, I smelled Old Spice on you and was immediately turned on when we embraced outside.
It's probably my
lot.
Suavecito.
Suavecito.
Yeah.
Your hair product?
My hair product. That shit
Pomade?
smells so fucking
Dude,
fire.
I use a curl cream now, but I used to be a Ruzel. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Ruzel, yeah, I used Ruzel a bit.
Ruzel's the shit.
Kyle Petty was a big Ruzel guy. Shout out Kyle
Petty
Petty.
had a great
His
head
hair
of
was fucking amazing. I mean, his hair honestly is even better now. Not to like be a creep or anything. I haven't talked to Kyle in a long time,
I
but
haven't.
seeing him on the internet and stuff, he's got like long hair and stuff, and
Hell yeah.
you know, he used to have like a real high and tight thing going on. So
Sexy man.
nice
Kyle
transformation.
Petty.
Yeah,
Shout
very
out.
very good looking man.
Shout out, brother. All right. We're wrapping it up. Good night. Love you.
I'm gay.
This was the Clash podcast.
It was.